Folks, I sat down with Kat Connor, self-professed fighter, swordswoman, and very scrappy nerd. She's amazing. You're going to want to sit down, relax, and soak in this interview because I'm promising you, this young woman is going places, and you can say, I heard about her at knuckletfup.com. Cool. So we just mentioned off camera that I liked your gimmick when you came out to fight in Bare Knuckle Boxing 44, and you told me it's not really a gimmick, it's pretty much who you are, which makes it even cooler to me. But there's too many fighters that just, and I'm not knocking them, I enjoy this stuff tremendously, but there's too many guys, you got to be memorable. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the thing, like once you get to know a lot of fighters that you learn about a lot of them is a lot of them can be very like brash and loud, like when they feel like they're in their element, like in their, in the ring, they can turn it on. But then like you bump into them in regular day-to-day life, a lot of times they're like kind of like quieter, a little on the shy side. It tends to be more introspective people, whether they realize it or not, that kind of come into martial arts and combat sports anyways. And it certainly it was for me, and it was kind of like through combat sports that I kind of came into my own and became able to be on camera, to talk to people, to be more open.
Yeah, well, that makes sense to me. Anyhow, I'm talking to Kat Connor, and how often do you have trouble with people saying Connors? Because I have to stop myself.
Yeah, like Connor's a fair amount. Like for the longest time, I used the pseudonym Condia, just
Okay.
because it made me put in like a fake name, or made me put in a name, and I was like, I don't want to put my real name on Facebook. So a
Right.
lot of times I'll still get like even BKB was like going to bill me as Catherine Condia. I was like, that's not my name. Like, I don't even know where you guys got that. They just picked it up from somewhere else.
That's cool. But no, I was watching your fight at Bare Knuckle Boxing 44. I watch all of them, and I was impressed with it. Both of you guys, you and Miranda Barber, fought well. I think it was extremely close fight. There you go. There you go. I mean, that's why I loved you from the beginning. I mean, you're memorable, you're charismatic, you're interesting, and I'm not just blowing smoke. I don't do that to people. I'm honest. And there's fighters I like that are boring. They're boring, but
Yeah.
they're good fighters. But I really like. I come from the professional wrestling world. I spent many years as a commentator, backstage interview guy, stuff like that. So, and I would coach those guys to be like, but you would be surprised. Not anybody super famous, but guys that I'd interview and they'd say, "What do you want me to say?" Or "What should I do here?" And I'm like, "Wow." I wasn't insulted by it or anything, but I'm like, "Wow, you're asking me what to do and what to say."
Yeah, it's like,
So,
you got to find, like if you're going to, I guess I feels like I only ever followed professional wrestling from the peripheral, but it's like if you're going to do a gimmick, you got to have like a little bit of like yourself in it, I
right.
think, to kind of make it work. And I actually remember seeing a very long time ago before he popped off, made it to WWE or whatever. It was like a documentary and like, about a bunch of like guys that were just like in wrestling school that were hoping to make it, or wrestling locally. And John Cena was actually in it, and he had like this like Terminator kind of, like robot, man gimmick
Yeah.
that he was doing, So
Yeah. It
and,
was
and
funny.
then eventually I guess he found a gimmick that works better for him, and look at him now. He's got to be one of the most famous professional wrestlers of the modern era.
Right. And even though this, meaning like bare knuckle boxing, is real, and it's what made me embrace it over wrestling as I get older. Wrestling's getting a little too silly for me. And when I found this real stuff, it actually started for me, and we're here to talk to you, but I just want to let you know, and some of my listeners, that it started at my local pizza place. I go there so often they know me, and they're like, "Hey, have you?" I was talking to them how wrestling was getting on my nerves and being too silly. Have you ever seen bare knuckle fighting, bare knuckle boxing? I was like, I know of it, but I've never really watched it. So then I started watching, and I was like, oh my god, this is great. This is what I'm talking about. This is what I want to see. So that's when it switched over, and so then I started watching bare knuckle boxing and bare knuckle fighting championship, and I'm real interested in you newer people, and I don't want to say more interested because the stars, the champions, of course, I'm interested in.
Sure, sure.
But as you guys come up, I think that's the bigger story for me because I worked in the independent wrestling world, and
Mm.
now even though you're not independent, you're in a major company, which is awesome. I still like seeing the rise. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, yeah.
one day I can say, "Oh, I told you." You know what I
You
mean?
know
That kind of
what
thing.
I think will be really interesting from your end is probably like, like if you talk to someone and it's like, all right, does this person got it? Like I think they got it. I think maybe they seemed like they had it, but maybe they don't. Then you'll be able to like kind of see like, all right, like what actually makes someone
Right.
take off. Like what actually like gives them that little something extra that like kind of pushes them over the level and like makes them pop off into stardom or fade away or whatever the case may be.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this, since this is an interview. I don't know how many interviews you've done, but tell my audience a little bit about yourself. How'd you get started? I understand you've been in it a long time.
Yeah, so like so I have been doing martial arts. I started with like karate when I was just a little kid. I started that when I was like 10 or 11 years old. And I did that for a while, and then like got into adulthood, and was like like I kind of it's time to do like a more adult martial art, I guess. I don't know, like I want like I think I took like a year or two off, and then it was like I want to get back into martial arts, like I did when I was a kid or whatever.
Hmm.
So then I, started kind of researching, and like I wound up getting into actually, believe it or not, sword play. So
Nice.
I was actually a professional, or not a professional, but I taught long sword fencing, which is like the big like two-handed swords.
Yeah.
You can see I have like a pretty nice little setup. I actually have like a couple, big ass swords. I have like a couple antique katana that are like 600 years old. Like
Wow.
genuine, samurai swords. So that was kind of like one of my early martial interests. And then through that, I was like, well, this is like pretty cool, but I want something that's a little bit more practical too. So then I was like,
Hmm.
MMA had just started kind of like getting a little bit of notoriety. This is in like the very early 2000s. And I just kind of like, like I had seen the UFC like way back in the day, because our karate instructor showed it to us. So that was like interesting. I was like, okay, well, like I was like, that's way beyond me. I'm never going to be there. Ironically, is what I thought. But it's like, oh, but that seems really practical. It seems really intense. I'm going to give it a go. So I got in the gym and started doing it. That was like 20 years ago, 21 now. Started training for like MMA. And I was like, well, this is really fun. I think I'd like to try one fight just to kind of like confront the fear of I'm always been very non-confrontational, very shy. So it's like, I want to kind of confront the fear of like actually being in a physical altercation just to kind of like, to see if I can do it. And I did it, and I came out and like I fought this girl that was like much bigger than I was. And I caught her with a big overhand right in like 24 seconds and like just flattened her. And then I was like, whoa. And after that, I just kind of like kept fighting. I was like, oh, this is, like, because it's like whether you win, obviously ideal. It's like, oh, I win, I want that feeling again. Or you lose, which didn't happen to me very much. But if you do, it's like, well, I can't end on that. I got to come back and have another one to get that back. So it's kind of just chasing this high. And I've been, I did that for maybe 6 or 7 years, like fought relatively competitively pretty often. But just the field, MMA was real slim for women, so I only ever
Hmm.
got 4 MMA fights, and like I got more into Muay Thai because I could do these Muay Thai tournaments and kind of like get people to fight me there. It was a
Right.
little bit bigger at the time, so I thought maybe that was going to be like the way to go. Little did I know, but was pretty successful in doing the Muay Thai tournament circuit around here. I still have actually like 5 of my belts. I have 7 of these from
Wow.
various organizations. And then I was like, well, there's no money in this stuff. And I know I want to do martial arts for a living. So the obvious answer was to retire from fighting and go into coaching. So that's kind of what I did, and did that for a bunch of years and still do on the side. And then, one day someone was like, Kat, like you're pretty good. Like maybe you should think about fighting again. And I was like, you know what? I'm getting a little long in the tooth for a fighter. Why not have a few more? So I did. And
Yeah.
I was like, this is great. I want to push the envelope. What can I do next? What's bigger? What's more exciting? What's better? So that's what led me to getting into bare knuckle, I guess.
And did they approach you?
So I actually approached them, or rather, like my old gym, Wildside Combat Sports in Clarksville, Tennessee, one of my favorite gyms I ever trained at. They had a couple fighters on the BYB card that happened, or the BKB card that happened in Nashville.
Yeah.
So and I saw that, and I like hit up my old coach. I was like, "Hey, coach, drop my name in the hat." He's like, "I already got you, girl. Already floated you out there," and they're interested. So, so then I reached out to them, and yeah, they took the bait, and here we go. You saw the result.
Yeah, and you're signed for several fights. You said in your interview at the end of the first one.
Yep, yep. I have 3 more at least. I'll do as many as I can get, honestly. But yeah, I'm signed for at least 3 more. We already have tentatively an opponent for the next one has been floated to me. So of course I'm game. I don't know how much I can say, so I won't
Yeah,
yet.
yeah.
But they're already like starting to float a name at me.
Okay.
So we'll
Good.
we'll take it, and then we'll see what happens from there.
But I mean, they clearly like you. They're going to sign you for 4 fights right off the before you even fought your first one. That's a
Well, I
good
feel like
sign.
this. I feel like this 145 pound. Like I had like a very good resume, obviously, so that looks good
Yeah.
on paper. And I had a recent fight in Thailand that was very dominant, so that looks good on video. And so I think that just kind of like worked, and they seem like they want to build that 145 women's division. Finally, seems to be taking off. I only had to wait 20 years for it to do so, but we're here. So they seem
Yeah.
like they want to build that. So yeah, so I'm game.
That's great. That's awesome. Do you think the sword fighting and all your knowledge on that maybe helps you? I mean, you're swinging a big heavy sword. You think that?
Yeah, like so they're not like super heavy. I think the main thing is that it kind of built in me very early on. Like one was confidence, because like I never considered myself to be like terribly athletic or competent, like physically or whatever. And like one day, like we were like doing like the training, and like one of the guys was like, "Wow, Kat, you have like really good like timing and sense of distance, which is a big deal in swordplay. I mean, in all fighting, but like in swordplay especially, because they move so fast, and you got to kind of track this little object that's trying to stab you in the face. But that complemented my sense of timing and distancing. I was like, "Huh, okay, wow." So I started thinking of myself a little bit differently. And then once our instructor like kind of like joined the army, and like was going to have to leave and do that, and actually left me to be in charge of the group at the time. So I was like, okay, wow. So like, so they really have, they really have confidence in me, like maybe I can do this. So then I coached to that for a while. And then from there, like kind of like started to kind of like pick up combat sports concurrently, started doing like, swords on weekend, and then like started to progressively get more and more serious with my combat sports. And now I don't really get to play with the swords anymore, because it's kind of more of like the hobby martial art. And it's like, well, I can
Yeah.
either do my hobby martial art, or I can do the martial art that pays a little bit, so I
Right.
think one pays. Uh, time enough for
Yeah.
the hobby martial art later. But yeah, I think it was definitely helpful, especially for getting that sense of like, wow, I can be an athlete, I can be a fighter, I can be competent at this stuff.
You fought Miranda Barber in your first fight in Bare Knuckle Boxing. It was a really close fight. I mean, I'm far from an expert. I've been watching this for maybe 4 or 5 months now, but I watch a lot. And how did you feel about that fight? She did a lot of, and I'm not putting her down. She's a great fighter, and I don't call her, what do they call her, Little Hulk or something like that. She's got a good reputation, and she's a good fighter. But she did a lot of. She's trying to clinch with you a lot. I mean, do you think she was
Yeah,
fighting
like
in a phone booth?
yeah, I thought that was interesting. I also think, like part of it is just kind of like the height difference. I think she's like
Hmm.
5'4", and I'm like 5'9", 5'9.5". So I'm taller. So she does have to like get in. And also I don't know if I feel like maybe the plan, like I'm just speculating, was maybe to try and like force me to kind of like fight in that dirty boxing space.
Yep.
Thinking that she's got kind of like the four fight advantage of having done that. She knows a little bit more about it, and she seemed like she was comfortable there from like her other fights. So I don't know if maybe it was speculated that I would be a little more uncomfortable in there.
Hmm.
Which at first I kind of had, the funny thing about like your debut fight is you're learning a lot of this stuff on the fly. Like I'm so used to like, all right, I can meet you here. Now I have to
Yeah.
let go if I want to punch you.
Right.
But now we're like holding on to each other and trying to work these punches in. So so I had to kind of like learn that a little bit more on the fly. So I think maybe she was either just trying to force me into an uncomfortable space, maybe she was crashing in like really hard to kind of like close that distance, and then bang, we collide, and a little bit of like fishing, a little bit hitting, and then a lot of times I think I was like kind of just winding up in a more dominant space in the clinch, as far as like being able to like kind of control here. Why don't you carry my weight a little bit? I bet that sucks. I hope it does.
Yeah.
So like I of course always like I like to fight on the outside a little bit more. I'm not like a stereotypical tall fighter. I don't like dance around and like pick off the jab or anything. Like I like to like stay in engagement range and slug. Like so like a little bit more space, to kind of get some work in would be awesome. But I don't like to be like way out on the outside, just kind of like picking the shots, the stereotypical tall fighter stuff. I've always said that I actually kind of tend to fight more like a short fighter. I like to get in and do a lot of like infighting.
Yeah, that's probably surprised more opponents. That leads me to what I was going to say, the Muay Thai. Okay, now another similar to bare knuckle boxing to me. I've heard the term. I knew generally what it was, but I'd never watched it until recently. And I started watching RWS a little bit, and then I got into one championship, and I know there's some controversy there because some people love the small gloves, some people hate it and think it's breaking tradition or whatever. But you did control yourself really well in that fight. I mean, I've seen fights where guys will go for takedowns. You know what I mean? And they'll forget.
Yeah.
It's just boxing, and they'll do something like that. So the fact that you went in there and controlled the Muay Thai stuff. But speaking of the Muay Thai stuff, you fought in Thailand, right?
I did. Yeah. It was March. I've actually fought in Thailand twice. I would like to fight over there more if I could stay over there more. But yeah, I fought in Thailand in March and had like a really good showing. Against a girl that's fought at like Rajadharm Stadium, and like obviously started from like a young age, and that was a very dominant showing for me. So so that was good. Like as far as like like I saw you kind of speculate on this a little bit. Like I don't really have like any preferences for like being super traditional. That's normally like not my, I started with MMA, I was getting away from tradition, like I'm like, all right, I'm a whatever works, kind of athlete, I guess you could say. I respect those traditions, but yeah, like fighting Muay Thai, fighting actually like a traditional Thai style fight, and like coming out and like doing like the Y crew, which I'd never done before. Ironically, it was my first time doing it over there in Thailand. I was like, I want to get it right for these people. I want to show them that I'm not just a foreigner coming in here. Like I want to pay respect to the art that has given me so many things in my life. Like I was able to coach Muay Thai professionally. I've been around the world now 3 times, to do Muay Thai, like it's just, it's a really cool thing, it's paid a lot of dividends into my life. So I really wanted to give that respect back while I was over there.
Yeah. Well, you have a very interesting perspective, like on fame, on how you earn your money. I have to touch on this. You posted about it on your page. We're interviewing you on your personal page, but you have a page that like a fan page type of thing.
Yeah.
You made a really nice post, and I saw countless people say, "Oh, you got to talk about this on podcast." So we got to talk about it. You're monetizing yourself. Tell us a little bit how you feel. I can't put it into words. You tell me.
Sure. So I've off and on like kind of like courted a certain degree of internet fame for a very long time. I've been popular in like a few like different like niches. So like it always seems like I'll get to a certain level where it's like a fair amount of people like kind of like know who I am, or like I've even been like recognized just like kind of like out like doing activities, like from like far away, like I'll be visiting another state and someone will be like, hey, I know you, you're da 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 da, or
Wow.
more commonly someone will see me online and be like, hey, I remember you from back in the internet days on like this forum or whatever. And it always seems that like I get to a certain level of like popularity or whatever, and then now in the social media area, when that happens, like you'll get these invitations from like Facebook or Instagram or TikTok, and they're like, hey, we want you to become a partner, monetize your content. We'll put ads up, our sponsors will approach you to like some degree. And like I don't know, I've never really liked that stuff. Like it always bothered me, like this idea of like monetizing like everything that we do and love, and like obviously to some degree as martial arts instructor and a fighter, like you kind of have to do it, but it's like I don't want to do it any more than is necessary. And like I just kind of really the idea of like kind of becoming an influencer or whatever, or even or being tempted like down that being tempted down like the influencer path really disturbs me, and like, and I can see why it's tempting. It's like I can get money just for posting the same kind of stuff I post, like that's really tempting, and that's where it starts. But then, like you kind of start to have like popularity in a niche, and that niche pulls you more and more into like a box where like you're trying to serve a certain type of like content and audience and perspective, and you're constantly, doing all this like image crafting, and it's like I just want to be authentic. I don't want to be tempted to be fake or phony. I just want to be who I am, and if you like me, cool. If you don't like me, that's cool too. If you don't like me and you're a 145-pound female, then we can settle it in the ring. That's really cool.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense. I think you're going to be extremely liked in the bare knuckle world. I think I'm a good judge of that. I think I was a good judge of that in pro wrestling, and I think I still am. And I don't want to call this advice, but you got to get some merch. I think you.
Yeah, that's one of the things. I would feel okay monetizing if I can come up with like something like if I can come up with like something cool to give people, then I think that would be cool, or something that I can have like a little bit of. I showed you a few of like the things that like I kind of like handcrafted, like I made like
Hmm.
this necklace, for example, like this headband that I was wearing earlier. I made this. I showed you some of the stuff that I blacksmithed, my little kunai knives.
Yep.
So stuff that like I can like get a hand on and create and do special. Then like like I would be okay with having that as like a merch, if I could like put some hands on it and change something about it. I like producing and transforming things in our lives. Like I want to have like an effect in the real world.
And I know that's going to be big too. I have a friend who was a wrestler for years, never got famous. Small, not a small guy, he's huge. He's just built. He's about my height, but he's just gigantic. Red Scorpion. And you remind me of him in regard to your background and what I'm seeing and the stuff you wear. Because a pretty well known wrestler said to him one time, "Your driver's license ought to say Red Scorpion." Because it's who he was. And he
That's
would get
awesome.
he'd make like $100 a night to wrestle because they don't make any money for small time guys at all.
Oh,
And
I
he
believe
would
it.
he would sell merch and make $300-400 at every show. Well, and he
Wow.
did stuff
Okay.
like that. He had bracelets and headbands, and he made scorpion cookies one time. It was like, holy crap, in little baggies, and people were lined up. The show would be over, and 2 hours later, he still had a line.
That's awesome. Yeah, you gotta respect that. People can sense when you are authentic about what you do, and I think that's kind of what makes. I think that's the little something extra that like kind of pulls people into your orbit. So ironically, as much as I kind of reject, like this influencer path, I think it is that degree of like authenticity that like I try and very much live. I think is kind of like what pulls people into my orbit. They can tell.
Yep.
People can tell like, oh, you just love what you do. Like even getting into the ring, like with Miranda or whatever, you can see I'm all like grinning and smiling. I'm all like,
Yep.
playing it up. I'm so excited to be there. And a lot of fighters, that's their moment to like, all right, I gotta
Yep.
summon like this killer, or whatever. And like I get that. I used to have to do that when I was first starting out. It's only been as I've become more and more of a veteran that I, am able to have a little more fun with like what I'm doing. I don't have to like summon it up. It's like I know that stuff's going to be there. I can turn it on when I have to. So I'm going to have fun. I'm going to play to the audience. I'm going to wave and smile and enjoy my time because it doesn't last forever.
Yep. The main thing I wanted to do with you is get your personality out, and I think we've done that. So let me jump into some more official type of questions. Do you find your training different for bare knuckle than Muay Thai or anything else, MMA?
Yeah. So let's see here. So I don't know if you caught it when the announcer said this. So this was actually my first official boxing match. I guess like if
Yeah.
you consider bare knuckle to be a subset of boxing, which I guess it would be. So this was my first official like boxing match ever, which was kind of funny to realize. Like as I was like showing up for it, uh, like so I've been training like with a boxing coach out here, trying to get out. Like the Muay Thai stance, for example, is a little bit more like squared up, and I'm not like traditional, like
Yeah.
kind of like this stuff. Like I fight more of like a Dutch style, so like it is very hands heavy. So like I had to like kind of try to like get into like more of like the boxing mentality of like a little more head movement, and trying to keep the right range and whatnot, because it's not like, okay, we can crash in and then bang, I can throw a knee, dump you on the ground.
Yeah.
I wish I could dump people on the ground. That would be very helpful. That's a great way to catch a break, is just to like dump someone on the ground and be like, you sit down, I'm tired, I'm gonna go sit. I'll wait for the referee to pick you up and dust you off.
Yeah.
It does change what you have to do and what you have to train. And what I'm realizing, even as I've trained boxing, is that I was sparring with some guy the other day, and like I kind of like was like, oh well, I got to train this dirty boxing stuff. So like I grabbed him and like uppercutted him a couple of times, and he looked like kind of like offended by it. So I was like, oh, I can't do that. I didn't really know that. I didn't really know the guy, so it's like, all right, well, I'm not gonna be, I'm not gonna use you as a test dummy for this new stuff that I know is kind of like offensive to you. So it was a lot of learning on the fly in there, and
Right.
also just learning, like, I was like, all right, I don't know how hard I can actually like hit someone in the skull without any gloves on, because I've never done it before. It's my
Right.
first time.
Yep.
And I learned like you can hit someone in the skull pretty hard actually, and your hand will be fine as long as you make a good fist. So
Mm,
I'll definitely take that into next time.
interesting. What about mentally? Does that affect? Is there? I don't want to ask you if you're afraid, but I've heard that. I've heard guys who won't fight bare knuckle. I'm not breaking my hands or busting my teeth. Does
Yeah,
that
I
come
think
into it?
mentally, like, yeah, I'll echo that. Like the thing that scared me most was like breaking a hand, because I know how long that can take to heal if you do.
Mm,
So that really like kind of scared me even more than like the getting hit bare knuckle. I guess part of like this whole martial arts journey, like the whole time I've been doing it, has been kind of like looking for like the next thing and like pushing the envelope. So like I think, like obviously there's a little more nerves that I might not have experienced, versus going into a Muay Thai fight, as as compared to going into a bare knuckle fight. But like overall, like I felt like I was like 90% of the way, confident. It's like, all right, I know I'm a good fighter. I know I can take a lick, so I should be okay. But like it's that first time like you get hit and you hit someone, like that's instructive. So
hmm
and I think that'll come out too, like in the next fight. Like, all right, it's like the first round or two, I was like actually very tentative. I was like trying to be like, all right, I'm going to try to be very precise, only hit things I know I can hit when I know that like I can hit them safely. And I was like, I think it was like part way into like round two, I was like, this isn't working. I got to start throwing more volume. And if I break a hand, I'll get it patched up later. It's fine. But right now, I have this fighter in front of me that's trying to take my head off. So I better just throw and worry about the details later.
And I think with your personality, this question probably answers itself. But because I think you have an easy time doing this, which is controlling, having a good fight and being aggressive or overly aggressive, like not getting
Yeah,
too
yeah.
angry or not letting that control you.
Trying to kind of like strike the balance between like, all right, how much do I push? Like, yeah, I think so. Like if you run into, well, I won't say if you run into, but like you look at a lot of like amateurs, for example. A lot of times they will like come in and like for the first minute of the first round, like
Yep.
like they are going off. But then after that, like they're gassed. And they're not just gassed for the rest of that first round, like they're pretty much gassed for the rest of the fight, because they just spent too much time in that red zone. So I think like part of what separates a professional from an amateur is like kind of like knowing when can I put a little bit more on the gas, when do I got to take a little bit off, how much is enough to stay hopefully up on the scores, to get the work in that I need to get, and push the pace that I need to pace without going too crazy, and either risking like burning yourself out, or worse, like getting in there and like throwing like crazy and like getting caught with something that you didn't see coming, because you were just thinking I got to attack, attack, attack.
Right.
Um,
Right. I think some guys go in and women fighters go in thinking I'm going to give it all and maybe I'll get a quick knockout and I'll be done. You
I,
know.
I, have heard, I have heard fighters. I have heard a fighter say exactly like those words. Like, I'm just going to come in, I'm going to blitz, and I think I'll overwhelm him. And I was like, I didn't say it to him, but it was like, oh, like I kind of see how often you train in the gym. I'm not sure that's a real good strategy for you, because I don't think that you're putting in the work that you need to put in to be able to do that effectively. Sure enough, he got 45 seconds in, and got caught with something, and down he went. And I was like, I told you that was a bad idea. Like,
Yep. Yep. And I don't want to insult either company. I'm a big fan of bare knuckle boxing and bare knuckle fighting championship, but I definitely think that's the difference. I think there's a little bit more of strategic boxers and bare knuckle boxing. They call it boxing, right? Than there is in bare knuckle fighting championship. Plenty of boxers. Don't get me wrong, but it also seems to be geared more towards the crazy flurry. The owner even
Mm,
pays more if you go in there and go crazy. He tells them that go in there and just kick ass, and I'll give you more money. So I just
yeah.
that's not putting them down. It can be fun to watch for sure. But so do you have? What about friends and family? Did anybody like have a problem with you fighting bare knuckle or anything?
Like I don't think so. I think like just kind of like as I've escalated. It's funny. Like I kind of posted about this for a minute the other day. Is like shortly after, for example, like like I said, I did karate when I was a kid, right? And then I started like doing Muay Thai and MMA, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think my mom never like realized that like I had started doing something that was like more intense than point karate. Because like I came home, I think it was like after I got like my first like nationals, like Muay Thai belt or whatever, which is a very serious sport. Come
Yeah,
back,
yeah.
all right, mom, look, like I'm the national champion, da 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 da. And she's like, oh, that's like that's good, honey. Did you know that I know Christy Martin? She's a real fighter. And I'm just like, Mom, I'm a real fighter. I'm a real fighter.
Yeah,
I fight full UFC rules. I'm a real fighter. like,
for sure.
and finally, like it wasn't even until like a couple years ago that like some of my family like actually came to one of my fights and like got to see like kind of like it's like okay, yeah, like actually like I'm legit. And
Yeah.
I think now they know I'm definitely like I don't think anyone can say I'm not a real fighter anymore, mother.
No, no.
I'm a real fighter now, mother.
Yeah. Well, we'll wrap up soon. I don't like to keep people much longer than 30 minutes, but two more questions for you. Let everybody know. I put out when I covered your fight what titles you had, and you corrected me, and that's not a complaint. But I was listening to commentary, and I'm trying to write down what they were saying. What titles do you or have you held?
Sure. The short answer is I have like four Muay Thai world amateur world titles, and then three like kind of I call them national. There's national. There's like a North American in
Mm-hmm.
there. The organizations would be, I think I have three worlds from the TBA, which is one of my favorite Muay Thai organizations. Shout out to them. I have one worlds from the IKF, and then I have a national title from WACO, which is one of the bigger kickboxing organizations. They took me to Worlds in Italy a couple years ago. That was a really cool experience. Side note, and then I have another national from the WKA, and then a national from like an organization that did like an invitational like North American tournament where they brought in like some fighters from Canada and then like some fighters from the US, and had it all out like in a two night tournament. So that was a pretty cool little thing. But so seven total. Hopefully that's not the end though. Be nice to round it out. Get like 8 or 9 or 10. I'll
Yeah.
take as many as they throw at me.
Yeah.
At this point, like I've said many times, like I'll take as many fights as like I can get in whatever rule set wants to be thrown at me, because I'm not like I've been punched in the face with bare knuckles now. What do I have to be afraid of anymore? Like where do you go from here? I'm like, am I gonna have to do like rope wrapped like glass dipped fists like kickboxer? Like like what are you how do you up the ante? And I dropped this the other day. Is like one of my friends wants to go to Myanmar and train Lethwei, which is like
Yeah.
bare knuckle Muay Thai with headbutts,
Yeah.
and I'm like, we're talking about doing that in like November or December. So I'm like, that could be, like, all right, that'd be a good way to like push the envelope a little bit, do a
Oh,
little
that's
left
for
way.
sure.
But you're talking like the niche of the niche sports. So
Yeah. I looked into that a tiny bit. I haven't watched much, but I know Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship just bought into one of those companies,
yeah,
and
I saw that too, actually.
so maybe we'll see it a little bit more online or something. I don't know.
Yeah, like, yeah, it's a weird sport. Like I said, it's real neat. It's real niche, but it'd be
Hmm.
cool. It'd be a cool feather in the hat to go to Myanmar and train it where it was born.
For sure. Okay, and I want to get back with you again as you fight. I don't want this to be our last interview, but lastly, okay, as I make friends with fighters, I don't hang out with them or something, but social media friends. Um, I get some issues. They're not asking me to solve it. I'm asking you for your opinion. They can't get fights sometimes. Like I'm friends with a guy. Hopefully, he doesn't mind me shouting him out. Randy Costa, Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship. He can't get fights. He fought there. I think he's kind of signed there. He's on there. He's on their page of fighters, right? But he can't. Do you have friends or anybody? Did you ever have this problem where you couldn't get a fight or you couldn't
Oh
find someone
man.
to fight you?
I have had that problem so bad that's really what retired me the first time. Is like
Okay.
like I've had functionally two fight careers. I had like my very strong early kind of amateur, semi-pro, whatever you want to call it, kind of career. Retired at 30 and 3, just because it was getting to the point where, like, one, there wasn't enough female fighters that had that level of experience, especially at that 145 and up weight class, for me to have anyone to fight there anyways. And then two, just like on top of that, like having like that that many fights, I was like, well, I don't really want to fight her. And so that was a big problem. I'd get like drops. I would have like 2 or 3 years at a time where, like, I would just have like drop after drop after drop after drop, and it's like, well, I'm not even like, I'm staying functionally in fight camp all the time, putting 4 hours a day into my training, trying to stay in shape so I can take anything on short notice. And like, it just keeps getting like pulled out from under me. So,
Right.
So like I retired, basically from that, and then like even like this last time, it's like into the point where it's like I haven't been able to. I've been training nonstop, since I got back from Thailand, and like not getting any bites. And even before Thailand, I had to go to Thailand to get a fight anyways, just because like people, just weren't taking the bait, I guess. I don't know if that's my level of experience, or if that's just like the way that the game seems to work, like.
Yeah. It definitely seems like an odd thing about the fight game. That seems to
It's
happen
surprising,
everywhere.
to hear it like happening to a male fighter though, because like they have like so many more. It's like, all right, you could be fighting like every weekend, like pretty much if you wanted to.
Yeah.
Maybe not at the level that you would like, but like, like there's other fighters there. For women, it's always been like a lot slimmer. So anytime you have like a drop, it's like, well, I don't know if I'll be able to find a replacement, even
Right.
with several weeks' notice.
Yeah, well, Randy's called guys out by name. He's done all kinds of stuff, and it just they drop or they don't answer him or whatever. His next, I don't want to make this about him, but his next fight, he actually told me he's going to be a small glove Muay Thai fight. He's never done it before. He's like, whatever.
Oh,
I took it so I could do something.
yeah. It actually looks really fun. I hope he has a good fight. Maybe
Yeah,
maybe he'll find out he loves small glove Muay Thai. It looks like a blast.
yeah. Well, lastly, I want you to shout out whatever you want. Any links you have? You shouted out your one wild side earlier? Anything like that?
Yeah, so let's see here. I guess I'll myself, check me out. Normally go by Combat Cat or Combat Cat Martial Arts. I'm on TikTok and Instagram and all that nonsense. TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, those are my main three. So yeah, find me there. I'll shout out my current coach and current gym is Coach Ricardo. It's like Rick Boxing, California. And then, my old gym that like actually hooked me up with the BKB, got me, kind of gave me a little bit of an in. My coach, Mike Merriman, Wildside Combat Sports. Love you guys, miss you guys. And yeah, I think that's it,
All right. Well,
Short and sweet.
if you come up with anything else and you want to send to me before I put the video up, which will maybe tonight, who knows, tomorrow afternoon at the latest, depends if I fall asleep sitting in my desk chair tonight or whatever. I'll send it to you as soon as I can. I'll put it in all my social media. knuckletfup.com is where you go to get
Yep.
links to all my social media. And hey, I can't tell you how much I appreciate it, and I can't wait to watch where you go from here. I really can.
Thanks so much. I can't wait to come back, and hopefully we'll talk about my victory for the next one too. Hopefully
Yes,
sooner rather than later.
hopefully. All right. I really appreciate it. Have a good night, and we'll talk soon.
Yep, you as well. Thanks so much. Bye.